Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Tensions are building between the United States and Iran for some time, but it looks like we're getting ready to really shut the whole country down, and there's nothing short of war that's going to come out of it. They're talking war over in Iran right now because they've been at war with us for decades, actually, and it's just heating up. But very biting sanctions, the dramatic fall of the rial, riots in the streets. I mean, there are a lot of stuff going on, and I'm sure the Trump administration is doing what it can to hasten regime change, as we call it. So anyhow, that's going to come. We're not talking about that anymore today, but that's something that should be in the top of your mind, because they want to shut off the Straits of Hormuz. We may have a shooting war out in the Persian Gulf. A lot of things are going to happen. Well, the growth and power of social media can be highly dangerous. And now President Trump is calling social media giants to account for censorship, especially censorship against conservative voices. He's even talking about taking action at the federal level to stop it.
Well, the millions of users who keep social media engines like Google and Facebook going are also taking notice of this bias. And as Dale Hurd tells us, they're addressing this censorship in their own powerful way, by leaving.
It's not clear what President Trump can do to stop big tech social media censorship of conservatives, but it's also clear that he's not letting up. Late Wednesday, the president tweeted this video showing that while Google promoted President Obama's State of the Union addresses on its homepage, it has never promoted one of his. Armed with new research showing Google's search results of his administration are overwhelmingly biased, the president has vowed to do something about the pervasive censorship of conservative ideas online.
I think what Google and what others are doing, if you look at what's going on at Twitter, if you look at what's going on in Facebook, they better be careful, because you can't do that to people.
And a new poll shows conservatives have already begun to vote with their feet. 2/3 of conservative Facebook users believe they're being censored, and almost 1/3 have left Facebook or are considering it. Tuesday, a senior Facebook engineer accused the company of having what he called an intolerant liberal monoculture that attacks conservative employees in mobs. Countless conservative social media users have found themselves filtered, banned, and blocked. Islam expert Robert Spencer, the author of 18 books, was blocked from using the funding website Patreon by MasterCard for allegedly spreading hate. He said it reminded him of Revelation 13, when people cannot buy or sell without the mark of the beast.
It's clear that the entire political left and the establishment media, which is on the left as well, wants to silence all dissent. And they're particularly energetic in doing this in the run-up to the 2018 elections, because they want to make sure that what happened in 2016 doesn't happen again.
Evidence of social media censorship is abundant, but what can the president do about it?
I love that the president's using the bully pulpit to make this an issue, but regulation doesn't always play out the way you want it, particularly for conservatives. We don't have a constitutional right to be on some of these platforms. I mean, let's face it, Facebook, Twitter, these are private companies. But what we want these companies to embrace is the goal and the ideal of the First Amendment.
And the president does have some options. Experts say he could call for more congressional hearings, encourage investigations by the Justice Department or Federal Trade Commission, or issue an executive order. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, in other news, Vice President Mike Pence tells CBN News that the liberal media is, quote, no match for President Trump. John Jessup has more on that.
That's right, Pat. CBN's David Brody and Jenna Browder spent the day with Vice President Mike Pence aboard Air Force Two and had some time with him inside his plane office cabin. Pence made a campaign stop in Michigan with Republican Senate candidate John James. Afterward, he sat down with David and Jenna, and he had a blunt message for liberals in the press.
The media, mainstream media, you think they're, in a way, the best thing that Donald Trump has going for him, because they work as a foil for him, and quite frankly, they are so 24/7 relatively anti-Trump that you just wonder if that doesn't play right into the administration's hands.
Well, All I know is for a lot of the liberals in the national media, they met their match in President Donald Trump. He understands that. Look, the American people elected this man because he had a right vision for this country, but also because he's a fighter. He's willing to fight every day to move this country forward, to see jobs created, to see us reaffirm our commitment to those timeless principles in the Constitution, to see our military standing tall again, to see America respected in the world again, and to be able to take on his critics one after another. And the only thing I know for sure is that President Trump is going to keep on fighting, and we're going to keep on winning for the American people.
You can see more of our interview at cbnnews.com and a full report right here on the 700 Club next week. The intelligence community reacted strongly when President Trump revoked the security clearance of former CIA Director John Brennan. At least 175 former officials, both Republicans and Democrats, denounced the move in a public statement. However, a new poll shows the majority of American voters approve of the president's decision. CBN national security correspondent Eric Rosales takes a closer look.
President Donald Trump took to Twitter to announce a new Harvard Capps-Harris poll showing a majority of Americans support revoking the security clearance of former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey. The president tweeted, "He's not surprised." The poll released exclusively to The Hill found 60% believe former national security officials who become TV news contributors should give up their clearances. 59% felt Brennan deserved to lose his clearance, while 64% said Comey and others at the FBI should lose theirs. The poll was taken 1 week after Brennan had lost his clearance revoked by President Trump, a move that some perceived to be an act of retaliation.
The bigger question that we need to focus on in all of this is, should John Brennan have had a security clearance in the first place?
Frank Gaffney is the president for the Center for Security Policy. He believes Brennan's harsh public criticism of the president is enough to revoke his security clearance.
John Brennan has conducted himself in a way that is totally without precedent in terms of how any former director of the Central Intelligence Agency has behaved, and that raises real questions about both his judgment and his character.
Gaffney says no one has the right to hold their security clearances, and the president was well within his authority to revoke them under Article 2 of the Constitution. But some question if the president can do it unilaterally without an appeal process.
Without the details being listed out in writing and issued to the individual, without the opportunity to respond, without underlying investigative materials being provided. This is an untested question.
Brennan claims the only news he's gotten about his own clearance was when White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders announced it had been revoked on TV.
Whether or not my clearances have been stripped, I'm still, uncertain about. But she said it. She read something from Donald Trump.
White House spokesman Hogan Gidley assured to CBN News that President Trump did revoke Brennan's security. Hogan said that President Trump's order went into effect immediately and that Brennan lied twice to Congress. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Eric. Pat, I know you agree with the president's decision, but do you think that there should be an appeals process?
I don't think there should be an appeal. I mean, having access to the highest level of intelligence is something that can be granted by the president or revoked by the president. You don't have to have an act of Congress to do that. You don't have to have a judicial appeal. I mean, that's a privilege, and it goes along essentially with holding an office. If you hold an office, you've got to have access to certain information so you can make intelligent decisions. Once you're out of that office, we owe you no obligation whatsoever to give you confidential information. And I think all the way from Hillary Clinton all the way down, there's no reason that these people should be given access to highly classified information. They are not any longer federal employees. No business would do that. You wouldn't give ex-vice presidents access to your highly classified information as you go down the road because they may be working for some other company. And these people are clearly working for the deep state. They're working against the president. And there's no appeals process. There's no legal aspect of it. I mean, it's just one of those things that goes along with the job, like a salary. When you stop the job, you don't get the salary anymore unless you've got some kind of a deal. I mean, it's ridiculous to make all this fuss about it. But Brennan, particularly, who's gone on television as an analyst for a more left-leaning network, why would he have access to highly confidential information? You wouldn't give it to him, nor should you give it to about 30 or 40 others. And it's time the president just wholesale says that's the end, one stroke of the pen, they're gone. All right, John, what's next?
Pat, New Mexico authorities released 3 defendants accused of child neglect in a case involving a Muslim sect and suspected terrorist activities. A judge dismissed the charges after prosecutors missed a deadline for more evidence. The other 2 defendants remain in jail on more serious charges. Authorities raided the desert compound earlier this month, finding 11 malnourished children and the body of a deceased 3-year-old boy. Prosecutors say the group follows a radical Muslim ideology and were training the children to attack schools and other institutions. Well, the Centers for Disease Control reports a shocking rise in sexually transmitted diseases in America. As CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson explains, not only are the diseases spreading faster, they're getting harder for doctors to treat.
In the last 5 years, a steep increase in chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis cases have shattered previous records. As if that's not bad enough, experts say the 2.3 million people diagnosed is likely a fraction of the actual number of people infected. We are sliding backward, declared Dr. Jonathan Merman, the Centers for Disease Control Director of Sexually Transmitted Diseases. He's talking about a 76% increase in syphilis, noting most cases are men with male partners. Chlamydia is the most common STD, with 1.7 million Americans diagnosed, nearly half of them young women between 15 and 24 years old. Gonorrhea cases increased by 67%, nearly doubling among men, and it's gonorrhea that has health experts particularly concerned. Syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea are all curable with antibiotics. The problem is gonorrhea has become resistant to all but one, and experts fear it's only a matter of time before even it no longer works. We expect gonorrhea will eventually wear down our last highly effective antibiotic, and additional treatment options are urgently needed, declared the CDC's Dr. Gail Bolin, who added, "We can't let our defenses down." The CDC calls on President Trump to declare STDs a public health crisis. But evangelist Franklin Graham tweeted, "What America has is a moral crisis and a spiritual crisis." Lori Johnson, CBN News.
This trend is definitely going the wrong way. Pat?
Well, we've had what's called a sexual revolution. We had the pill. The women are now no longer under the bondage of getting unwanted pregnancies. So they have the pill, they have other types of birth control, and they figured that therefore sexual activity is just okay. And everybody thought, okay, I've got syphilis, so I can take a shot. I've got gonorrhea, I can just take a shot. And I've got chlamydia, so all I need is a shot. Well, now they say the shots don't work, especially on gonorrhea. So all of a sudden, you're looking at the potential of blindness, you're looking at sterility, you're looking at all kinds of terrible things. And as Franklin, I agree with Franklin, we've got a moral crisis in this nation because there's no longer any strictures against out-of-wedlock sex. And that is going to lead to these diseases. It used to be that was the penalty for the out-of-wedlock sex. Now, the penalty is coming back because the medicines aren't working anymore, at least especially in relation to gonorrhea. So if you're watching this program, please be warned, your life may be in danger if you think you can just do what you want to do with as many sex partners as you want to have and do some with impunity. It's not going to happen.